Welcome back, everybody. This is Akina309 here, and I'm doing something different today. Now that I have played all 4 of the Pikmin games, Pikmin 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think it's time that we do a Pikmin tier list. So I will be ranking every single Pikmin. I'm not just ranking each individual Pikmin by itself, I'm ranking each instance of every Pikmin. So I'm ranking the Pikmin 1 red Pikmin separately from the Pikmin 2 red Pikmin separately from the Pikmin 3 red Pikmin, and so on. So each Pikmin that's in a different game will be getting a different ranking based on which game it appears in and how good or bad it is in that particular game, if that makes sense. So anyways, I will be starting with the Pikmin 1 Pikmin. So Pikmin 1 only had 3 Pikmin. We had the red, yellow, and blues. And I'm going to be starting with red Pikmin and Pikmin 1. I think these guys pretty much just kind of go in A tier. There's nothing like crazy special about them. They're just kind of the Pikmin 1 Pikmin go-to. Actually, no, I'd say they're more like B tier. They're kind of B tier. They're not like amazing, but they're not like bad either. They have good attack damage. Obviously, they have higher damage per hit. They're immune to fire, which is very good in Pikmin 1, just because in that game, fire geysers can't be destroyed, so you really need them for a lot of fire obstacles. There's also a ton of fire-based enemies in the game, so it's something that you have to be like very conscious of when you're playing Pikmin 1. You have to always be like watching out for fire, because there's a ton of it like all throughout the game. I think there's like fire hazards in basically every map. Next up, we're gonna do Pikmin 1 yellows, and they kind of suck. They're kind of bad. They're not horrible, they're just very situational. And the reason for that is just it's hard to justify using yellow Pikmin more than like twice in the game. Because Pikmin 1 did not have electricity as a hazard. Yellow Pikmin did not have any elemental immunities, like blue Pikmin could go in water and red Pikmin go through fire. There was no electricity, so there's nothing for the yellows to be invulnerable to. The only thing they can really do is carry bomb rocks and get thrown higher than other Pikmin, but both of those are very situational and have very limited use cases in the game. I think there's only like 2 or 3 parts in the entire game that really require the use of yellows. Other than that, you can pretty much go the entire game without using them. And even then, you can probably finesse the parts if you know exactly what to do and how to do it. But, I mean, literally there's only like 2 or 3 parts that actually require the use of yellow Pikmin to get them. One of them is, there's a part in the distant spring, and there's a part in the forest navel that I'm thinking of. But like those are only 2, and like the rest of the game you basically don't need them. There are a couple tricks that you can use them for, like you can use them in the beady longlegs fight in the forest navel. They're really good there, but like you don't need them. They're just something good to have. You don't really need them. Like if you had no yellows, you could totally just go in there with reds and blues and win the fight anyways. Yellows just make it a little bit easier. And like the bomb rocks thing, barely need that. They're basically utility Pikmin, if that makes sense. You use them for like 2 or 3 specific parts, and you use them to tear down some rock walls. You use them to tear down 1 rock wall in the final area, and a couple in the distant spring, and a few in the forest navel, and that's basically it. It's kind of weird. They just get very little utility, and outside of that, there's not really much of a reason to use them at all, except for the final boss fight if you want to use bomb rocks, but you can do the whole fight without bomb rocks pretty easily. It's weird. They're just not that great. Moving on, however, blue Pikmin in Pikmin 1 are A tier, and it's kind of weird why. They're utility Pikmin. There's not much of a reason to use them unless you need them. The only reason they're higher than any other Pikmin in Pikmin 1, especially above yellows, is because there's a ton of water in Pikmin 1. If you've ever played Pikmin 1, you know that the second you get blue Pikmin, you're basically using them for the rest of the game up until the final boss fight, because you need them to get like so many parts in the distant spring, and then if you want to get all the parts, you also have to backtrack to the other areas. Literally half the parts in the Forest of Hope require the use of blue Pikmin. Half of them are locked behind water. one of the one extra part that's hidden in the impact site, that's hidden behind water. You need blue Pikmin for that. Almost all the parts in the distant spring hidden behind water. I want to say 2 or 3 in the Forest Naval are behind water. So there's parts in literally every area, at least a couple, that you need blue Pikmin for. You need these guys for so many parts in the game. I might put a figure up on screen just showing how many parts in Pikmin 1 you need blues for, but it's an inordinately large amount. So it's crazy. Blues and yellows are both equally utility Pikmin. Like if you don't require them in that moment, there's no reason to use them, just get reds. But the thing is, you need blues so often. But that's what the Pikmin 1 rankings kind of look like. Reds are kind of like a high B tier, maybe a low A tier. I might move this guy around a little bit depending. Yellows aren't that good because they're a utility Pikmin that doesn't get used much at all. And blues are very good because they're a utility Pikmin that gets used pretty much constantly from the time you get them until the end of the game. Moving on to Pikmin 2. This one's a little different. I would say reds are still kind of B tier. You still get the bonus damage from them, and they're immune to fire, but fire is a little bit less of a hazard because the geysers can be broken, and it's a little less prevalent of a hazard in Pikmin 2. There's just not a ton of it. There's a good amount of it, but like it's not like all over the place, and it's not always too. Most of the time you can kind of like maneuver around it anyways. I don't really have much else to say about them. Yellow Pikmin and Pikmin 2 on the other hand are quite interesting. They can no longer wield bomb rocks because bomb rocks are now just straight up a hazard and can't actually be used by the Pikmin. But electricity is a hazard in this game, and not only that, it's the most dangerous one. Out of all the hazards, it's the only one, other than being crushed by falling rocks, that instantly kills Pikmin. Like, out of all the elemental hazards, water, fire, poison, and electricity is the only one that cannot be saved from. It instantly kills Pikmin, just like getting crushed. So, for that reason, I think they're A tier. Maybe lower A tier, but they're really, really good just because they don't get killed by electricity. You can use them a lot, especially in the final fight with the Titan Dweevil. One thing with the Dweevil is that it uses all 4 of the elements in different attacks. You can pretty much just go straight in there with nothing but yellows and lean into like having 70 yellow Pikmin in your party, because the only attack he ever uses that can instantly kill a Pikmin is electricity based. All of his other attacks are pretty easily avoided. Even if they do hit some of your Pikmin, you can easily save them by using your whistle, and you have a good amount of time to save them. The only one that's like super hard to avoid is the electricity one, and it also insta-kills any Pikmin hit by it. These guys are just kind of like far and away really good Pikmin to have in your crew at all times. They're just super good against anything electricity based, and electricity seems to be it's a pretty common hazard in the game. Like, you pretty much can't go more than one cave. Every single cave you go into, there's probably something with electricity. It's a super common hazard. Moving on to Pikmin 2 blues. I would say they're B tier. They're kind of right here with the Pikmin 2 reds. Water's just not quite as common of a hazard in Pikmin 2, and they didn't really receive any other changes. But since there's less water in Pikmin 2, they kind of benefit less from their utility as the water Pikmin. Not to mention, you get them last out of 5 Pikmin types, so you get them super late in the game, and you just kind of do a little backtracking, use them for certain parts that you couldn't get before, and you're done. Like, you use them for certain caves that have water. The one thing that I think keeps them out of C tier is the submerged castle and like 1 or 2 other caves that have a ton of water in them, because you literally need them, and if you didn't have blues, you would have nothing. But like, again, they're very utility focused. They're not like something that you would take with you because you want to have them. You take them with you because you need them. Moving on to this guy right here. Yeah, do I need to say anything else? If you watched my Pikmin 2 playthrough, or literally anybody else's Pikmin 2 playthrough, I don't need to say a word. They're absurdly broken in this game. They're just really, really good. I don't know what else to say. They're just absurdly powerful. They can carry the same weight as 10 regular Pikmin. Their slam attack is absurdly powerful. They can stun enemies, which is an absurdly broken mechanic, because if you keep throwing purples, this the stun time stacks on top of each other, and you can literally freeze enemies in place for like 15 seconds straight with absolutely nothing they can do. You can actually destroy so many massive tanky enemies and even some bosses with just like 20 purple Pikmin and a bunch of reds. It's absurd how much damage these guys do with just a few stuns and some slam attacks. I don't really need to say anything else. They're just the best Pikmin ever. They're horribly balanced, don't get me wrong, but damn, they are good. Moving on to these white Pikmin from Pikmin 2. They're interesting, but I would say they're like high B tier, low A tier. And again, they're more of a utility Pikmin like the blues. They're immune to poison, which is a hazard in the game. And there's a couple of caves where it's pretty prevalent, but most of the game, you don't have too much poison where it's like it's super crazy to deal with. But they give you the utility of being able to dig up treasures. And a lot of treasures in the game are actually locked behind, they're like buried underground. And you need these guys to fish them out because they're, again, a utility Pikmin, kind of like the blue Pikmin always have been for water. These guys are your treasure digging Pikmin. They're also very good at digging through things, and they're really fast as well, so they're good for carrying things. But there's not really a reason to have more than like 10 or 15 of them in your party at once. Like, if you just get 10 white Pikmin right after you get them and hold on to them for the rest of the game, you never need more than 10. Maybe 15 or 20 for speed in terms of digging things up out of the ground, but like, if you watch my playthrough, I never had more than like 15 or 20 out of the ship at once, and even that was pushing it. They're just not super common to use, but their utility is very good, so I think they stay up here in B tier. The final Pikmin in Pikmin 2 isn't really a Pikmin, it's the Bulbmin. And these guys are kind of hard to compare, just because you can't keep them like regular Pikmin. You don't really get to use them outside of caves, and you can only use them in certain caves that these guys spawn inside of already. So if they don't spawn in there, you can't even use them. But in the situations that they get used, so I'm going to look at these guys kind of in a void, just because it'd be kind of unfair to be like, oh, well, they're in F tier because they don't exist in 90% of the game. Because Bulbmin are really good. So I think, here's how I'm going to look at these Pikmin. So I'm going to look at them in the context of their game, but with no other context involved. Just assuming you have these Pikmin in your party and you want to use them, and you're thinking of how you're going to use them, assuming you already have them. So if we're assuming that, these guys are easily S tier. They're immune to every hazard. They're immune to electricity, water, fire, and poison. The only thing they can get hurt by are things directly like attacking them with like bites or crushing attacks. And the only hazards they're immune to are the only hazards they're not immune to, rather, are crushing by falling rocks and explosions. And, like, nothing's immune to that. So you can't really fault them for that because there's nothing that is. But they can literally go through water and fire and electricity and poison all the same with actually no problems. They're absurdly good in the situations that you do have them. And there's a lot of instances where they end up being really good. In some cases, a good reason to literally go into a cave with less than 100 Pikmin in your party intentionally. Because if you know that there's Bulbmin in there to get, you're going to want to use them. And the best part is that I'm pretty sure in every cave you find these guys in, there are candy pop buds on later floors. So you can actually throw these guys into the flowers to convert them to other Pikmin types and take them out of the cave with you and buff your numbers. I've left caves with positive numbers before just because of these guys. So they're really interesting, but I think for the sake of Bulbmin and a few other instances, we'll be looking at them under the assumption that you're playing through the mainline story and you already have this Pikmin in this game. Moving on, we have all of the Pikmin 3 Pikmin now. Pikmin 3 red Pikmin. I don't know, man. Maybe they're like low B tier. Fire's just not a super common hazard in Pikmin 3. I've never really been like, holy crap, there's so much fire here in Pikmin 3. There's just not much fire in the game. There's like one little spot in one area that I can think of that has a lot of fire. That's it. And it's not even that much. There's like one fruit back there, and that's basically it. Like, so there's not too much of a reason to have these guys outside of their increased damage, which is useful. Like, they're good for fighting. But as we'll see with one particular Pikmin later here, he kind of gets overshadowed. So there's not too much of a reason to have a ton of these guys. You'll want them for sure. I think I'll move them to low B tier. You'll want them for sure, but you don't want tons of them. There's not a reason to have a ton of them. Moving on, Pikmin 3 yellows. A tier. because they're kind of a combination of Pikmin 2 yellow and Pikmin 1 yellow. They can wield bomb rocks again. Now, the only thing is that in Pikmin 3, any Pikmin can wield a bomb rock. However, these guys dig a lot faster than other Pikmin colors, and they're also really good for being thrown higher, which in Pikmin 3 I find has more use than it does in other games. It's not like a crazy good thing to have, but it has a much more prominent use case in Pikmin 3. There's a lot more flying enemies, I think, that gives it a good use case and a good excuse to be pulling out more yellows. You're not going to want a ton of these guys, but the utility that they provide is very good. There's also, in my opinion, a pretty decent amount of electricity in this game. Not as much as Pikmin 2, but there is a good amount. And again, it's not an insta-kill hazard like it used to be, but it's still a pretty dangerous one. And there's a lot of electricity walls and things you have to knock down. Again, still more of a utility-focused Pikmin, but there's now kind of a reason to want to bring them with you outside of, oh, I need one of these. There's kind of like a, well, if there's a flying enemy this way, I'm prepared. So there's kind of a reason to want to bring like 15 of these guys with you. Not like you're stacking up your army with these guys, but my point is that they're pretty good to have. Maybe they're not A tier. I'll put them like bottom of A tier, top of B tier. I might move these guys around a little bit later. Moving on to Pikmin 3 blues. I hate to do this, but they're really bad. They're really bad. I might even put them, I'll leave them like bottom of C tier. They might be some of the worst Pikmin ever. I hate to say that, but they're pretty bad because at this point in time, I think Blue Pikmin needed a buff that they didn't really receive, because at this point in time, we'll see again later, they kind of get overshadowed by another Pikmin, but outside of the utility for being able to go into water and swim in water, there's not a reason to have Blue Pikmin in your party, like, at all. You just don't really use them outside of the one utility that they have, which is going in water. And so, unless you're going to 100% Pikmin 3 and get every single last fruit in the entire game, you use them for like literally one area, which is the area that you get them in. You use them for basically that, and that's pretty much it. And you use them to get a few fruits and to build a couple of bridges, and you for that one boss fight at the end of that area, and that's basically it. Unfortunately, they suck. They did get one buff in this game where they can like swim in water. So if you in Pikmin 1 and 2, they just had like the command move feature where you like move the right stick around, hold a button and move the Wii remote, and you kind of like command them around. And in Pikmin 3, they kind of if they replaced that with the charge feature. So if you use the charge underwater, Blue Pikmin will swim towards an enemy that's like swimming around in the water, which is useful, but like how often are you using it? Because there's already not that much water in Pikmin 3. Not to mention, you get these guys last. You get them after every other Pikmin color again. At that point, you literally already have flying Pikmin, which again, I'll get to, but they overshadow these guys in any situation that doesn't explicitly require you to go underwater. So they just kind of suck outside of the very few number of instances where they're required. Like, unless I know for a fact that I'm gonna go get something that like is underwater and I have to bring blues with me, I'm almost never going to put Blue Pikmin in my party because there simply isn't a reason to, which is very unfortunate because it's kind of like watching a fall from grace, going from A tier to B tier down to C, like very bottom of C, bottom of the barrel down here. But that's just how it is. It's really unfortunate. Anyways, moving on, Pikmin 3 Rock Pikmin. S tier. They're really, really good. And here's why. They kind of outshine Pikmin 3 Reds in what they did best, which is dealing a lot of damage very quickly, because they don't have like the permanent like 50% damage buff that Red Pikmin have, but when you throw them, their impact damage is absurdly high. Not to mention they bounce back off of the enemy that you threw them at, which is extremely useful because against a ton of enemies, you can just throw them once, like throw a whole volley of like 20 of them, and by the time that the 20th one's been thrown, the first ones are starting to stand back up. You just use your whistle to call them all back and throw them all again. And you just cycle them over and over and over and over. And you just have this constant stream of Rock Pikmin being just bombarding your enemies. And their impact damage is absurdly high. They take things out of the air in one hit. They may not be resistant to fire like these guys, but like I said, it's not a very prominent hazard in Pikmin 3. You know what it is? Crushing. Crushing is a pretty prominent thing in every Pikmin game. And it's something that's like unavoidable, like this is the one thing that will always one-hit kill your Pikmin. Not these guys. If they get crushed by something, they don't die, they just get buried, and you can pluck them back out, which is very good. They're so risk-free to use The only thing you really have to be worried about are elemental hazards, and even then, you can just kind of whistle them back as long as you're careful. And other than that, the only thing you really have to worry about is explosions. That's it. Like, they're just really, really good in this game. You always want rock Pikmin in your party. There's always a good excuse to have a good number of them. Moving on to flying Pikmin. Need I say more? They carry things across water, which is like half of what blue Pikmin did. They carried things out of water and across water. Well, now all they can do is carry things out of water, because if it's just on the other side of a body of water, you just walk through the water, your flying Pikmin just kind of fly over it, and then once you get to the other side, you put them on there, they carry it back across. These guys are just really good. Not to mention, they are very good at taking things out of the sky. They don't have a lot of attack damage, but their utility is just absurdly good. Very good Pikmin to have in your party, and from the minute you get one, you kind of want to have them in your party until the end of the game. They're just super good against a pretty large number of enemies, anything airborne basically. Super good to have these. I don't really know what I want to do for these guys. If anybody here has played Pikmin 3 before, you'll probably be wondering what the hell are purple and white Pikmin here for. These guys aren't available in the main campaign of Pikmin 3, which is really, really weird. I don't know why they're actually on this list, because these guys only appear in mission mode and bingo battle. So they only appeared in a side mode for missions that I have actually even played it on this channel, and for bingo battle, which is the multiplayer mode. So there's not really, it's hard to compare them, because I wanted to look at all these guys in the context of story mode and just like regular gameplay, and you can't get these guys through normal gameplay. For the sake of argument, we'll look at them in the context of their existent in the place that they exist, which is mission mode. So in the context of mission mode and bingo battle as well, I guess, Pikmin 3 purple Pikmin are probably the worst Pikmin ever created, because they took away like all the damage that they did with like their slam attack, and they made them not really stun enemies anymore. The only thing they do is like carry more weight and move really damn slow. So it's literally purple 2 Pikmin without all the good parts, and only the couple of drawbacks they had, with the one advantage of carrying a lot of weight. And that's it. They just are really not good. And unfortunately the same is kind of for the whites. They just, all the bad things of their Pikmin 2 counterpart without much of the good. There's just not much of a reason for them. I would argue that whites are probably better just because they're faster and have a utility worth caring about. But even then, like, I guess they have an elemental resistance. Purple Pikmin and Pikmin 3 are really, really bad. They are garbage. And it's really sad, but I also don't know why they're just not in the story at all. But I guess they just wanted to bring them back for story mode, or not for story mode, for missions for some reason. Moving on to Pikmin 4 now. Pikmin 4 Pikmin. There's a shit ton of them. And I haven't really even seen too many rankings for these guys just yet. So I'm going to be kind of doing this on my own. Like, obviously all these are pretty heavily influenced by my own decisions, but like I've at least seen people rank these before, and I have a general understanding of where other people would put them, even if I know mine don't really align with theirs in some cases. Anyways, moving forward, Pikmin 4 Reds. I don't know. I want to say like B tier again. They're constantly like a very steady Pikmin. It's kind of hard because there's not tons and tons of fire in Pikmin 4, but there's a pretty good amount of it. The extra damage they do is considerable. They're not super prevalent once you get more than 3 Pikmin types, because you're not always going to have them in your party, which is one of my complaints about Pikmin 4. I don't know why you could only have 3 kinds of Pikmin in your party at once. I know that they want you to strategize, but I feel like a forced limitation is kind of a weird and not great game design way to go about it. Actually, no, I think these guys are like top of C tier, actually. They're not great because they don't do a ton. I think C tier. I used them a decent bit because there's some fire enemies. Extra damage they do is pretty considerable. Again, not too much to say. I've already talked about red Pikmin a ton in this game. They're just kind of a steady Pikmin you can fall back on if you need some solid damage. You just get some red Pikmin out. Yellow Pikmin in Pikmin 4? I don't know. There's not a ton of electricity in Pikmin 4. The extra throw height is fine. You don't use it a ton. I put them in C tier, honestly. You don't use these guys a ton. You get them pretty close to the beginning, and then you kind of like don't use them much at all. I use them for the extra throw height a handful of times, but I mean, other than that, you don't hardly use these guys. Pikmin 4 Blues, C tier, pretty low in C tier too, because they're cut and paste Pikmin 3 Pikmin with 2 Pikmin to overshadow them this time and not just one. It's kind of sad, but the only thing they can really do is go into water, which is the only thing other Pikmin can't do. But there's so many other ways to get most things blue Pikmin can do that it's just like hardly ever worth having them in your party. There is that one cave that's kind of like submerged castle-esque in a way, where you can only take in blue Pikmin, which is cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that they kind of brought that idea back, but like they have one utility and that's literally all they do. And it just kind of sucks because like, I like blue Pikmin, but they don't do much in most games. And it's just like, they need a buff. I'm turning this into a TED talk for a minute. Blue Pikmin need a buff. In Pikmin 3 and 4, they haven't really done anything. Other Pikmin have overshadowed them for 90% of the use cases that they used to have in 1 and 2. And for the very rare times that you use them, you literally only bring them for what you need them for, and then you put them back. Like, there's not much of a reason to carry them around. They don't have any combat effective changes, except for in Pikmin 3 where they got the swim feature, which they do retain in Pikmin 4, but you're hardly using that, bro. You're almost never using that, especially in 4. I think I used that like twice the whole game. It's just not useful. They just really lack a place in the game. And I would really urge the developers to kind of find a better way to use these guys or give them more reason to be in the game, because there's not much of a reason for them to be there right now. But anyways, I'll step off of my soapbox about why blue Pikmin need a buff. Moving on to Pikmin 4 purple Pikmin. I think S tier. You don't get these guys until kind of late in the game. However, when you get them, they are kind of cracked. I like these guys in Pikmin 4. When I got them, I was like, I kind of forgot that they added purples and whites into the game. But then I got them and I'm like, oh shit, this is cool. I was genuinely like, wow, this is fun. Like, I was glad to have them back, and they're damn near as good as they were in Pikmin 2. They have their slam attack back. Their stun isn't like quite like what it used to be, but they're very strong Pikmin. Their damage is back to being as crazy high as it used to be. They are still really slow, but there's ways to get around that. Like, you can just have them ride on Ochi and, oh look, their speed on the ground doesn't matter anymore. Not to mention, all Pikmin in this game are just faster than they've ever been, at least from what I've seen. Like, these guys are great in Pikmin 4. I love having them. I've taken them into a few caves, and I literally, like, any single fight that I've done with them has just been a complete wash. The only thing I think I ever struggled with in this game where I had purples was the fight with the Emperor Bullblacks, like that mini boss. That fight was hard, but like, still, these guys are just absurdly powerful. I'm so glad to have them back. Like, it was a major fall from grace from Pikmin 2 to 3, but I'm glad to have them back where they kind of were meant to be. They're meant to be a super strong Pikmin, and they finally are again. Moving on, Pikmin 4 white Pikmin. I feel like I didn't really use these that much in the game. I wish they kind of used them more. I think they kind of go in C tier. Maybe like right here, just because you don't use them much. There's not much of a reason to take them with you. Pretty much exclusively a utility Pikmin. Like, they don't really have a good combat focused buff. They don't really have anything like universal. The hazard that they're immune to is very uncommon in the game. You don't get them until pretty late, and there's only a couple of cases with their hazard in it. I just feel like you don't use them enough for them to warrant being higher than C tier. They're not bad. They're just the advantages that they provide don't really apply to very many situations. Other than that, I mean, I've really talked about white Pikmin a lot so far. There's not really two ways about it. They just kind of are, and you use them like 3 times, and I kind of forgot that white Pikmin were in the game for a little bit. Pikmin 4 rock Pikmin. I would say they're like right here at the top of A tier. They aren't quite as good as they were in Pikmin 3, not because they got worse, just because purple Pikmin came back. Other than that, they're still rock Pikmin. They are super strong, can't get crushed. They do a ton of impact damage and bounce back when they hit their target. It doesn't get much better than that, right? Like, they're just great. They're amazing for combat. They're not slow. I can't complain about them. Winged Pikmin in Pikmin 4. They're not as good as they were in 3. They're useful. I'll put them in B tier because they're useful, but the use cases are not common. So you kind of have to because Pikmin 4 is weird where you can only have 3 Pikmin out at once, or 3 kinds of Pikmin out at once. So if you're going to be limited to 3 kinds of Pikmin, you want to make each one of those 3 variations really, really count. Winged Pikmin were really good in Pikmin 3 because there was no limitation, so you could have all 5 Pikmin variants out at once. And you could just say, oh, I'm going to throw 15, 20 of these in the party, and that way just have 15 of them with you at all times. If you need to carry something back, throw them on there. And it's done. It's not, you don't have to worry about it anymore, which is amazing for these guys. Now that you can only have 3 kinds of Pikmin in your party at once, it imposes this limitation, and you have to make each color that you take with you count. And the winged Pikmin, they aren't very good in combat, and there's less flying creatures in this game than there were before. So they kind of struggle because the only really utility that they have is to be able to carry things over obstacles and over water and stuff, which is good. And you do get to use them in a handful of caves and a couple of overworld situations. You have to sacrifice another Pikmin color that you would otherwise want. So they're just a nice to have, not a need to have, which I think I'll put them in the bottom of B. They're not amazing. You just don't get to use them much, which is the same fate as the blues and whites, I think. They're just a little bit better because their utility is more universal. Second to last here, Ice Pikmin. They're good. They're really good. They don't do amazing damage or anything, but they can float on water. They can freeze water for other Pikmin to travel across it. And if you hit an enemy with enough Ice Pikmin, they literally freeze and are rendered completely immobile and cannot attack back. And you just get immeasurable amount of free damage on them. They're also immune to a new hazard called, I think it's frost or cold or something. It's when you go into those caves and like the floors are super cold and your Pikmin freeze intermittently and you have to whistle them back to unfreeze them. It's just an extra benefit on top of this whole slew of benefits they have. Being able to freeze enemies, freeze water so other Pikmin can cross it, being able to float across water so you don't need blue Pikmin to cross water. You don't even need winged Pikmin to cross water, which is why these guys, actually now that I think about it, these guys might be C tier, because you can literally do everything winged Pikmin did basically, except for go over things with Ice Pikmin, which is absurd. These guys are really, really good, and that alone is just enough to put them like A tier. On top of all the other things they get, they're up here. They might even be better. I don't know if they're better than purples. They might be, bro. They might be, bro. They might be better than Pikmin 4 purples. They're really good, bro. I don't know what else to say. They're really good. If you go back and watch like I have all the VODs from my Pikmin 4 live streams up. And if you go back and watch some of those, from the moment I get Ice Pikmin, pretty much the rest of the game, 80% of the time, I have like 30 of these guys in my party. And every time I get into a fight with something relatively tanky, I just throw 20 of these at it, freeze it in place, and tear it apart. It's over. It's instantly over for whatever enemy it is that I was against. They're dead. Ah, man, Ice Pikmin are really good. And I'm really glad. It's a really clever idea they have with these guys, and I'm super happy they're here. Last, Glow Pikmin. Again, very hard to compare these guys because it's kind of hard to put them in the context of the game with other Pikmin because they don't exist in the same space as them. They only come out during night expeditions, which no other Pikmin exist for. So you literally only get them at a time and you cannot use any other Pikmin. But again, for the sake of argument, like I did with the Pikmin 3 Pikmin 3 whites and purples, I'll just kind of look at them as they exist in their space and compare them to other Pikmin as they exist in their space. And if I'm doing that like I did for these guys and for the Bulbmin, they're right up here. They're basically Bulbmin 2.0. They're immune to every hazard for some reason. Yes, they're immune to fire, electricity, water, poison, and ice. They can't even be frozen. That's an absurd list of things that they can be immune to. Like, they're immune to even more things than the Bulbmin, which isn't really a fair comparison because there were less hazards in Pikmin 2. But still, they're immune to literally everything. They are also immune to mud pools. They don't get slowed down in mud. They can't get confused. They can't get buried. They can't fall down an abyss because they float. And they're immune to like literally everything that isn't getting crushed or eaten. That might actually be better than these guys. Not to mention, if they finish bringing something back to the Luminol for you, they literally teleport back into your party. You don't even have to go get them when they're done doing a task. They come back by themselves instantly. Not to mention their charge attack that they do, like what's the name of the attack? They like do that glowing orb thing that just gets more and more powerful the more glow Pikmin you have. They're really, really, really powerful. There's no two ways about it. They're simply just in another league. The only reason I don't think they're better than Pikmin 2 purples is because Pikmin 2 purples are equally broken in terms of their damage output, but you can use them all of the time. That's the only thing separating these two right here. These guys may as well be immune to most things just because you can whistle them out of it and navigate around those hazards that they can be caught in. Yeah, these guys are just completely and utterly broken. It's super fun to use though for the night expeditions. Like when you're gathering things, they're just super fun to use, and it allows you to strategize a lot differently and really play super aggressively. But other than that, yeah, I think this is about what my Pikmin tier list looks like here. I want to see if there's like any arguments to make for any of these Pikmin here. Low-key, I think Pikmin 1 Reds could get bumped up to low A because of their higher damage output and the fact that fire geysers can't be destroyed, and there's a pretty reasonable amount of fire in the game. Fiery blowhogs are really damn strong in that game. They're so tanky, bro. They might be A tier. I think they can go there. I think they sneak in. Because they're definitely better than these guys. You might be better than you. Loki, you go at the bottom of B. You're not that great. Pikmin 4 Reds aren't the best, which is an unfortunate case. They just don't really get too much of a use case, which is an unfortunate thing for a couple of the Pikmin and Pikmin 4. Like these guys all right here don't really have a good use case. Neither of these guys. As much as I love Pikmin 4, one of my complaints about it is that it isn't that well balanced, and this tier list really shows it. These guys, broken. These guys, solid as hell. These guys, you barely use them. Like, you have all these Pikmin types, but you don't use half of them for 80% of the game. But I'll stop ranting about my opinions on Pikmin 4. That has a separate video that is coming, I promise. That's got its own deal going on. I'll explain that shortly. But yeah, other than that, that's what my Pikmin tier list looks like. I'm trying to see if there's any last little adjustments I can make that like might really balance some things out. Low-key, you're better than Pikmin 4 yellows. You're low-key better. I think this is what it looks like. So yeah, this is the Pikmin Guru's official Pikmin tier list. Thanks so much for watching. I'm super glad I could bring you guys this video. It was really fun to make, really fun to think back on my experiences playing all of these Pikmin games and think of how I would rank all of them and how exactly good or bad each of them are. It's really fun to just kind of go and consider who's better than who in different games. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this. Let me know if you want more stuff like this. And yeah, I will catch you guys in the next one. Later.